So I'll go ahead and start with introducing why we're all here today and who this is brought to you by. So first and foremost, my name is Gloria Nerona, and I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. It's a big title, long, lots of words, but to say that I'm here to at William James to really engage our community and think about all the opportunities that we have to diversify our community and really eliminate all the barriers that bring us to a more inclusive environment. I am celebrating next week my 1-year anniversary at William James, and upon arriving we worked really diligently to bring on an inclusive excellence framework, and we developed as an institution a council for inclusive excellence, and it is our college-wide committee that has students, faculty, and staff, and they are part of bringing the pulse and ideas on how we can do better and continue to improve toward this idea and concept of inclusive excellence. So on behalf of the entire Council for Inclusive Excellence Committee, I welcome you all today. We chose to host the August Community Forum, which is our monthly community forums that we have. They inaugurated in June, and we thought, what a wonderful way to convert the August Community Forum into a welcome forum and a welcome reception. We have a wealth of new faculty members that have joined us, bringing their innovation to the classroom. We have some wonderful new staff people that have joined us in different spaces in student life. And in our online learning communities, in our research departments. And we have a majority of who you all are today are students. We are so appreciative of your presence, and we welcome you with all the good spirit that we can muster during this time, and we are happy that you're here. And for those of us who are returning students, we are also happy to see your faces, and to know that we are continuing to build this community because of your voices and your leadership. And so thank you for being in this space. So today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. Mike Veny is his name, and I'm gonna read so I get everything right. But today our wonderful guest has a story to share with you. And the story today is his journey through life. Mike Veny managed to overcome a lifetime of mental health challenges to become a professional drummer and one of America's leading mental health speakers. He's the author of the best-selling book, Transforming Stigma: How to Become a Mental Wellness Superhero. His advocacy work has been featured on ABC, NBC, and CBS News. As a 2017 PM 360 Elite Award winner, Mike Veny was recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in the healthcare industry. He is also a writer for Corporate Wellness Magazine, Health Central, and delivered a TEDx talk called Mental Illness is an Asset. He's worked with a variety of companies, including T-Mobile, Heineken, United Auto Workers, General Motors, and the Wounded Warrior Project. In his spare time, when he's not joining us, he enjoys weight training, doing transcendental meditation for 20 minutes 2 times a day, and eating a good bone and ribeye steak cooked medium rare. He lives in New York City and is addicted to buying luggage, while watching YouTube videos on how to pack a suitcase. His packing checklist for business trips is one of his most prized possessions. Please help me in welcoming Mike Veny.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you everyone for being here today. Like all of you, I'm what they call zoomed out. I mean, I'm just on my computer every day, and sometimes I'm teaching, sometimes I'm learning, and it's just like, oh, here we go again. So I promise you, I'm going to do my best to keep your attention during this time. I apologize in advance. I don't have any slides, and I don't know how to use PowerPoint. So you're stuck with me for the entire time. But we're going to go on a journey together, and it's going to be a fun journey. And usually I give this presentation in like an hour and a half. So you're going to see my New York City speaking skills come out. And I'm going to condense this to about 50 minutes. So without further ado, we're going to talk about mental health. And we're going to talk about the stigma surrounding it. And mental health is a real big challenge today for all of you, for the entire world. I'll be honest with you, when COVID-19 came around, I had just gotten back from London. And all my speaking engagements for the spring were canceled. So I'm thinking, okay, work's done for the year. I had to get to a place of acceptance. But before I knew it, within weeks, companies were calling me left and right. And I've been really busy this year because mental health is on everyone's mind. When I use the term mental health, I'm talking about three things: thoughts, feelings, and behavior. If any one of those is having a challenge, you probably have a mental health challenge. I'm also going to be talking about the stigma, which is also about thoughts, feelings, and behavior. You see, thoughts are stereotypes. You might have a stereotype in your mind of what someone with a mental health challenge looks like. Feelings are prejudice. You might know that I struggle with depression and get uncomfortable every time I walk in the room. And behavior is discrimination. Maybe you didn't want me to sit at your lunch table because I have issues. Either way, these issues affect everyone in every level of society. And what happens is people are not getting the help that they need for their mental health challenges. And I am determined to change that. A lot of people have asked me where stigma comes from, and I just say, I don't know. It's just been around forever, since the beginning of time. But I have two clues as to why it exists. One is what I like to call the law of the tribe. We are tribal people by nature, and you can actually see this in effect in a kindergarten classroom or on a kindergarten playground. You can watch kindergartners as they socialize. One of the words that they use a lot is weird. They say, you're weird, you're weird. And the way it works is like this. Let's say we're in a group and you all have Nike sneakers and I have Reeboks and we're in kindergarten. You're going to probably look at me and call me the weird one because you notice that I'm different. And we all did this in kindergarten and we all laugh when we see kids do it. But guess what? We grow up and nobody wants to be the weird one, even as adults. That's one of the reasons stigma exists. The second reason is what I call the law of confusion and frustration. Mental health challenges are confusing and complex. In fact, in this presentation, there's no way I can even cover the whole gamut of mental health. I don't think anyone can. And, I was in the gym many years ago. I was working out. I was doing one of those push up routines where you put your hands in different positions. I'm not going to lie, I was trying to impress some girl. And I'm in the gym and I'm doing this push up routine, and I ended up embarrassing myself and hurting my wrist. I quickly played it off, got myself out of the gym, went home and iced my wrist. And I knew really quickly that it was either a sprain, a strain, or a broken wrist. 3 days go by. If it's not better, call a doctor. Unfortunately, mental health challenges don't work like that. Most people don't wake up and say, oh, I've got depression today. Maybe I should talk to someone. Typically, someone discovers it for you in your behavior. When people ask me what I struggle with, I'm very open about my mental health, and I'm going to share my whole story with you in a moment. But I've been diagnosed with so many things, I don't know really what to tell you. I mean, the way I describe my own mental health is by describing something I love dearly in this world: food. I love food. And I'm going to be real. If you're going to be my friend, you got to like food. Doesn't matter what kind, you just got to like food. I'm a foodie. And in my kitchen, I have mainly one appliance. It's not even a regular home appliance, it's an industrial strength Viking restaurant oven. This thing is a bad boy. It's big, it's got four burners, and typically on the top right burner, simmering in a frying pan, is my obsessive compulsive disorder. Something was said to me a few weeks ago, and I can't stop thinking about it right now. It's making it really hard to concentrate on this presentation. On the lower right burner is my anxiety. And I don't know how relaxed I appear to you right now, but I'm struggling. I feel the anxiety in my chest. It's really hard to give a presentation. And on the top left burner is my anger and depression. And on the bottom left burner is a stock pot. So I can take the ingredients from each frying pan, the OCD, the anxiety, and the anger and depression, and put it in a stock pot and close the lid and turn up the heat. That's a problem waiting to happen. And if you're following me so far, it's not the kitchen that's about 30 feet away from me. The kitchen's in my head. And I've been living in this kitchen my whole life. And it's made it hard to make friends. It's made it hard to date. It's made it hard to get work. And I've struggled. But the kitchen's kind of cool in some other ways because right up there and right over there are mirrors, kind of like a fun house. There's a slanted mirror and a curved mirror because everywhere I look, everything's about me and it's distorted. But truthfully, the kitchen in my head protects me from you because deep down inside, I think you're going to hurt me and I'm scared of you. And so that's why I'm stuck in my head at all times. I've been living in the kitchen my whole life. I said to you that mental health is about thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Unfortunately, we can't see people's thoughts. We like to think that we can perceive people's feelings, but you can absolutely observe someone's behavior. And that's where it started with me. Behavior. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in first grade, and mommy and daddy used to tell me to behave because I was bad. I would punch my little brother, start screaming and yelling. I was constantly in trouble because I was bad. They even took me to this doctor called a psychologist, and I had to sit there and talk to the doctor, and I didn't know why. I just thought I was a bad kid. So one day, they had a good idea to really get me help. They decided to enroll me in this place called Catholic school. They figured the nuns would straighten me out. Some of you are smiling. You know this is not going to go good. But either way, mommy and daddy had very good intentions. And in second grade and third grade, I did good. Had a good teacher. But in fourth grade, we've all had this experience in school where you've had that one teacher that nobody wants to get, that teacher with the reputation for being mean and evil. Well, in my school, her name was Sister Pat, and she was known as a mean and evil nun. And just a quick side note, a few years ago, Sister Pat's been dead for many years, but my brother went to an event for the school. And, these are adults now who've graduated from the school, and they were talking smack about Sister Pat. So it wasn't just me. But back to fourth grade. So there I was in fourth grade, and I remember like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the back of the room, and I had a smile on my face, and she told me to wipe the smile off my face. And I said the thing that you should not say to your fourth grade teacher. I said no. Now picture how that goes down. Everybody goes, ooh. So Sister Pat then approached me and started yelling at me. And it's funny as I'm telling you all this, like I'm feeling the same anger in my chest that I felt that day. I said some things back to her that I'm not going to repeat on this Zoom call right now. And she got really mad and grabbed my arm and tried to pull me out of my desk. And I did something I deeply regret. I tried to punch my teacher as hard as I could. She then took holy water and threw it at me and called me the devil. I took the holy water off and threw it back at her and said, "Put this on your wrinkles, woman." And needless to say, I wasn't going back to that school. Mommy and daddy had a serious talk with me about respect. And I told them I was angry because nobody has a right to talk down to me. And I'm 41 years old and nobody has a right to talk down to me. I don't punch people anymore, though. But needless to say, I'm now expelled in September in fourth grade from Catholic school. So my parents needed something to do quickly for me because they're getting worried now. So they decided to put me in a public school where my uncle was the principal. They thought it'd be good for his career and good for me. Well, long story short, after 3 weeks, several fights, and a desk mysteriously flying out of my hands in the direction of my teacher, I was expelled from that school. Two expulsions, October, fourth grade. The rest of fourth grade, though, was the absolute best school year ever. 1 hour of home tutoring every day. That's back in the past when staying at home was cool, not nowadays, right? And so there I was in fourth grade, stayed home, a 1 hour a day of tutoring. This woman would come to the house and she was so scared of me. She didn't make eye contact with me at all. And I just was hoping that I could do home tutoring the rest of my life. Well, the summer between fourth and fifth grade, mommy and daddy took me to see the Batman movie. And I just want to be clear in case we have some Batman fans on here. I'm not talking about Christian Bale or Ben Affleck. I'm talking actually about the classic Michael Keaton starring as Batman, and Jack Nicholson was the Joker. And I loved the movie so much. And I was excited at the end of the movie. And I asked if I could be Batman for Halloween or the Joker. And they said, if you behave, you can. And what's interesting about this movie, if you've ever seen it, is Jack Nicholson, who plays the Joker, plunges to his own death at the end of the movie from a gargoyle. And after I got home, I plunged, not to my own death, but into what we call a rage. Let me explain what a rage is. We all get angry. We all snap. That's life. But a rage is when you are extra angry for a very long period of time and you're out of control. I was punching my parents. I was destroying things in my home. Nothing could stop me. And the next thing I know, I was put in a mental hospital. And I just want to say this, that even though they tried to give me a nice talk in the mental hospital and say, everybody goes through this, it's going to be okay. It's like, no, this is a mental hospital. I knew what that was in fourth grade. And it didn't help that at night I would look out the window of the mental hospital, and right across the street was the county jail. And I realized the people in the jail had the exact same rights as me. But I quickly learned a secret to getting out of the mental hospital. There's a secret. And I'm not supposed to tell you this. The secret is, if you ever get in there, you simply need to convince them that you have coping skills, and they let you out. And that's what I did. I convinced them I had coping skills, and they let me out. I hope to never go back there. In fifth grade, I was put in special education, and this was the one teacher I had in school that I never messed with. I saw this woman a few years ago. She's about 5 feet tall. She still scares me. I keep my distance. I don't know why. But needless to say, I found a way to annoy her. I would tap on my desk and make beats with my pencils. Eventually, my parents and the teacher let me play drums. And I'll never forget playing drums in fifth grade. Holding drumsticks for the first time was perhaps the greatest feeling I ever felt in my life. I really, really remember that. And when I was not in the drum class, I was sad all the time and I didn't know why. I would later learn that it's a thing called depression. But think about what I said to you in the beginning of my presentation. Mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating, especially when you're a kid. So all that I knew was I was sad and I wanted the sadness to go away. So I came up with a plan. One day I came home from school and I went into the kitchen and I went into the medicine cabinet and took all my pills and tried to end my life. And I ended up almost dying. I ended up passing out, and my mom found me unconscious at 10 years old and rushed me to the hospital to get my stomach pumped, and they saved my life. And I wouldn't be here today if she didn't do that. And I want to be honest with you, like, I'm grateful, but at the time I was pissed off at her because I just wanted the pain to go away. And it's like, why are you getting in the way of me taking care of this pain? After that, I did a little bit better. And in seventh grade, things started to get worse. I started to go into rages more than ever before. And I want to be honest, when you're in seventh grade and you go into a rage, that's not really a rage anymore. That's called violence. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but I want to be honest with you. It was what it was. I was violent and out of control. I was also doing a thing called self harming. Self harming is a big problem for a lot of people. Many of you might deal with self harming. And I want to just say this as someone who used to self harm. If you are doing it, there's no shame. However, I encourage you to talk to someone about it because I can promise you that there's a better way to help your pain. There are three reasons that people self harm, from what I understand. One is we're trying to take away the pain. The second reason people self harm, believe it or not, is it can actually become an addiction. Prior to this pandemic, when I would travel the country, I would find myself each week in a CVS or Walgreens drugstore because I had to buy razors somewhere in the country to shave this head right here. And I wouldn't buy those cheapy ones. I buy the expensive ones that vibrate. I like those. And I would find myself lingering a little bit too long in the razor section, thinking I need a little extra just in case, and I have to quickly get myself out of the drugstore. Self-harm became an addiction for me. The third reason people self-harm is they think it's cool. That one I just don't understand, but To each their own. Either way, I encourage you, if you are doing it, again, talk to someone through it. One of the nicest messages I got was from a young lady at a high school. I don't know who she was. It was just a random Gmail address. She messages me. She told me that she had been 9 months clean and sober from self harm, and it was one of the greatest emails that I ever got. I promise you there's another way. But needless to say, self harm, violent at home, out of control. I was put back in the mental hospital. And sadly, they did not buy my coping skills story this time. This time I was in a hospital for 6 months in a mental hospital. My parents had to make up a story. I had to spend Christmas in a mental hospital. But eventually they gave me weekend passes to go home with my parents. And in the weekend passes, it was great because my family, they wanted to do like family activities, like, I don't know, go to the mall, go to the movies. I didn't want to do any of that. So in seventh grade, when I would come home from the mental hospital, I would lock myself in my bedroom and play drums to Red Hot Chili Peppers and LL Cool J for the entire weekend. Come out sweaty and go back to the mental hospital. That was seventh grade. Between seventh grade and 10th grade, I am proud to say that I was on a first name basis with the local police. I knew their favorite sports teams and their kids' names. I was constantly in crisis. I was just out of control all the time. By the time I had finished 10th grade, 15 years old, I was expelled from 3 schools, hospitalized in a mental hospital 3 times, several suicide attempts, lots of self harm, violent at home, and on about 7 different medications. My parents were worried. All the while, my younger brother Jason is doing just fine. The summer between 10th and 11th grade changed my life. That summer, my mom approached me with the mommy look. Let me explain what the mommy look is because I know we have some moms on the phone here. Moms are the most dedicated people on the planet. And honestly, they're also the sneakiest group of people on the planet. They do these things called mommy tricks, even when you're an adult. They look at you and they're saying one thing, but they're plotting something else. Moms do this all the time. And they give you the mommy look and play mommy tricks. So my mom approached me with the mommy look. And she said, Michael, I have to talk to you. I knew she was up to something. I took a step away. I said, what's up? She said, I have a question. I knew this was a mommy trick. What's your question, mommy? And she said, what would make you happy? And I told her, I said, I know this is a trick. She said, no, Michael, answer the question. So I thought about it for a few moments and I told her the truth. The only thing that would make me happy is playing the drums. The medication's not working. The therapists aren't working. The drums makes me happy. So I said, I want to play the drums all day in the house. My dad, who was in the vicinity, said, absolutely not in my house. But moms are sneaky. So she looked at me with the mommy look and said, thank you for letting me know. And she immediately left me hanging like that. I'm the most impatient person on the planet. You can't do that to me. That entire week, she was in her bedroom making phone calls and talking about me. I didn't know what was going on and I was getting really frustrated. So finally I confronted her and I said, Mommy, what's going on? Tell me. You're doing something. You're up to mommy tricks. And she said, yeah, I am. She said, Michael, no school wants to take you because of your behavior. I said, yeah, I know. I thought I was going to get to quit school, by the way, every teenager's dream. But she said, I found a performing arts high school on Long Island. And if you can get an audition together, they'll accept you. And as I share it with you, it brings up a lot of emotion because, sorry, it's the first time in my life I ever felt a sense of hope. Drumming was the only thing that made me happy. And I'll never forget going into 11th grade in a performing arts high school. So I was the exact same height that I am now. I'm 5'9". It's probably about 50 pounds lighter. And I had some hair. I had some serious hair. I miss that hair. I think about it every day. I had sideburns and a goatee. I was cool back in the day. And there I was amongst my fellow artists. And for some oddball reason, my grades started to go up. With the help of my psychiatrist, the medication went down to 0. My behavior, no more mental hospital, no more police. And people wanted to be my friend for the first time. And it was going good until one day, this teacher with the big greasy mullet. I'll never forget this teacher with the big greasy mullet spoke down to me and yelled at me. And my fists clenched and I knew it was over. The cool thing about a performing arts high school, though, is that you have different rooms where you can go practice your instrument. So I stormed out of the classroom and went in the room to go play drums by myself. I apologize because I would totally play drums for you right now, but I live in a New York City apartment and I don't want my neighbor coming after me. However, there's lots on YouTube with me playing drums, so I promise I do it. So there I was just playing drums in the room by myself, and the teacher comes in and says, Michael, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing my thing. He said, 15 minutes. So I played for 15 more minutes, and for the first time in my life, I calmed down. It was weird. No suspension, no expulsion, no police, no punching teachers. This was weird. Several months later, I decided I wanted me a girlfriend. And as you might imagine, I mean, some of the girls thought I was cool, but most kind of kept their distance from me. And this girl that I liked just wasn't having it. And I didn't know what to do with my feelings. I was in that same class with that teacher, and I just stormed out of class and went in the room to go play drums by myself. Just sat there, just grooving. The teacher comes in and says, Michael, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing my thing. He said 15 minutes, but then he asked me a question that changed my life forever. He said, Michael, can I hire you to play drums in my band? At that moment, the light bulb went off in my head. When I got angry, anxious, upset, when I was sad, I would act out. I would self harm. I would punch people. I'd go to the mental hospital, go to the police. But when I acted out on the drums, people wanted to give me money. So I approached my parents as a high school senior with the conversation no parents of a high school senior want to have, especially when their other child is talking about law school. And I said, Mommy and Daddy, I want to be a drummer. And their heads just went down like this. And I would love to tell you that they supported me. I think they were just kind of like, okay, because I was okay. They said, like, we're just going to go along with this for now. It was interesting. My first semester of college, I'll never forget, I was 18 years old. First semester of college. Usually after the first semester, freshman year, everyone goes out and parties. My friends were like, hey, Mike, you coming out after exams? I couldn't go out with my friends because starting at age 18, I was being flown around the country, being paid thousands of dollars to play drums. The career worked. And it kept steady as my career for about 10 years. And in fact, I'm still a drummer to this day. Pre COVID 19 and post COVID 19, I actually do corporate drumming in the workplace where I bring drums and teach people about real diversity and inclusion on the spot, working together, which is really, really important. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm actually coming up with a socially distant drumming program so we could do it 6 feet apart. But drumming is the medicine that helped me, and I get to share it with others. But I want to be honest with you. I still struggle with mental health challenges. And as I became into my adulthood, I thought my challenges were gone away. Except sometimes I'd be playing in a band and notice my anxiety. And if you were the band leader, I didn't want you to find out. And so I had to try to keep it together. And the worst was going on a date with a woman. Oh God, the first date was good. And the second date, she would ask the question, can you tell me about your childhood? And at that point, it was pretty much over from there. And so I didn't want anyone to find out about my history. In fact, my parents said no one could ever find about your mental illness. And so for years, I was carrying a shame with me until 2011, and I had another breakdown that was worse than what I ever had before. And at that point, I realized that for me, my mental health challenges were actually here to stay in my life. They weren't going away. And it wasn't just my mental health that I had to address, but also the stigma. And I tried to get an appointment with a therapist. As many of you know, it's kind of difficult to get an appointment. It takes a while for some reason, even though we want people to have help. And so I got this appointment, had to wait 6 weeks, and I was feeling really suicidal. So the way I kept myself alive was I went to the library and learned everything I could about the stigma surrounding mental health so I could start to feel better about me. I ended up writing three things down on a napkin, and I folded up the napkin and kept it with me and looked at it every day. And those three things are about what I'm about to teach you right now because they changed my life forever. And I've shared these three things with people around the world, and they've helped so many people. I promise if you listen to what I share with you, if you're struggling right now, you can actually help yourself within the next 24 hours. If you love someone who's struggling, you can help them in the next 24 hours. I learned that stigma is actually a three-part process. It starts with shame. So maybe you're struggling with a mental health challenge, or you love someone who is, and you feel ashamed. You don't want to talk about it. The shame leads to silence, so we just keep our mouth shut. But the silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self destructive behavior, and if we're not careful, suicide. Let me say it again. Stigma starts with shame. Shame leads to silence, and silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self destructive behavior, and suicide. But here is the remedy. I actually decided to pick apart each of those and figure out what I needed to do to transform each. So I started with shame. So I had to figure out first what was the opposite of shame. So I went to the most reliable resource that I could to find the opposite of shame, Google. And what Google told me was that shame, the opposite of shame, sorry, my little Google Alexa thingy just popped up when I said that. um, the opposite of shame is pride and honor. So how do you go from feeling ashamed to a place of pride and honor? It's actually really simple. It's a thing called self-care. When you take care of yourself for some oddball reason, you start to feel better about yourself. I did a presentation years ago for 1,500 educators in Illinois at a self-care conference. I want you to picture this: 1,500 people at a nice resort for a self-care conference. I was their closing speaker. They were super excited to hear about my self-care tips. And I did something you should never do as a speaker. I lied to my audience. I got up on stage and I said, ladies and gentlemen, I gave you all the Mike Veny self-care assessment and I have the results. I completely lied to my audience. I didn't really give them an assessment. They're all looking around for papers thinking, what assessment did he give? Well, my assessment was very simple. Think about what I just said before. 1,500 people at a self-care conference. That morning, before my presentation, I went to the hotel gym to work out. There were a total of 3 people in the gym. The night before at the bar, there were 300. There's a difference between self-care and escape activities. And sometimes we confuse the two. When I said this to them, they were like so embarrassed because I completely outed them. Again, spending more time on escape activities than self-care. We all do that sometimes. So it's really important, especially if you're in school, to distinguish between self-care and escape activities. Nothing really wrong with escape activities in moderation, but we want to do self-care. One way that you can start doing self-care in college, and this is something that I recently shared with a news publication that I'm going to share with you, especially this year. There's just so much going on. Like, this is the most stressful time. I mean, years ago we were saying college is more stressful than ever, but now in 2020 right here, I can't imagine what it's like for all of you. But here are some things that you can start doing to help yourself starting today. One thing that you can actually do is find time to just be silent during the day. Our brains are constantly going. They're just constantly going. We're looking at our phones, we're doing all these different things. But one of the best things you can do is simply shut everything down, close your eyes, and be silent. I promise you, it does wonders. It's so simple to do, and it's completely free. You don't even need an app for that. The other thing that you can do, and this one is something that helps a lot of college students when there's overwhelm, you can take out a piece of paper and a pen every single day and do a thing called a brain dump. And what a brain dump is, and the funny thing about a brain dump, by the way, is this is something given to people by therapists, professional organizers, and coaches, is you take everything that's on your mind and you put it on paper. It's that simple. When you do that, you will take some of the overwhelm away. It won't take away your overwhelm completely, but it gives you an opportunity to start taking your power back. During COVID-19, I keep yellow legal pads all over my apartment and pens because there are always things on my mind. And this is not just stuff that you need to do. Maybe it's that boyfriend or girlfriend that you're fighting with. Maybe it's that parent that you hate. Whatever it is, take it off of here and put it on a piece of paper. I promise you, when you start doing that, you're going to start to gain more control over your life. So it's really, really important to do that. The other thing is therapy. There are a variety of resources that are out there. Some are very inexpensive. If you go to my website, I'm going to be sharing some more with you. But when you go to therapy, one thing I say to people about therapy: therapy isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of self-discovery. I think I told you all before that I love food. And one of my favorite dishes, I'm about to make myself so hungry here right now and it's lunchtime, but one of my favorite dishes is at the Outback Steakhouse, a restaurant chain here in the US, and it's an appetizer called the bloomin' onion. And let me explain, if you've never seen this thing: they take a giant onion, they pierce it down the center, and they deep fry it. And it comes out, and everyone in the restaurant stares at it. And by the time it gets to your table, it's gone in like 2 minutes. The cool thing about the bloomin' onion, though, is when it comes out, you actually see for a moment how many layers an onion has. I mean, think about it. We know an onion has many layers. We all know that. But you actually see it when the bloomin' onion comes out. It's the same with therapy. You know you've got a lot of layers as a person, but therapy allows you to discover those. You see, there's what you know about yourself, what you don't know about yourself. And therapy allows you to discover what you didn't know, that you didn't even realize that you didn't know about yourself. It's really important to do that. So, all of you, I encourage you to practice self care. Tons of resources on my blog for you to do that. And if you have any questions, I'm going to give you my contact information. That is how we transform shame: self care. So, how do you transform silence? This is my favorite one. It's really simple. To transform silence, you just got to talk about it. That's it. See, I could just end the presentation right there. Just talk about it. But what does that mean? I am going to tell you about an experiment that I did. And typically, if we were in a normal setting where you were the audience, I would ask you to say that you promise not to do this. So, can you all promise me that you are not going to do this by typing "I promise" in the chat? Because you can't do what I'm about to tell you. I need you to say, "I promise." I need a commitment. I'm going to be looking in the chat for those commitments. So, oh, they're coming in. Okay. I promise. Okay. So here's the experiment that I did. Um, Mommy and daddy told me no one could ever know about this. And one term that you haven't heard me use much is mental illness, because honestly, mental illness makes me feel bad about myself. But if you are my friend and you want to use it, that's okay. I'm okay with you using it for yourself. I just don't use it for me. But I decided to do this experiment that you promised not to do. For an entire year, several years ago, I decided to introduce myself to every single person I met and say, "Hi, my name is Mike. I'm mentally ill." I just wanted to see what would happen. Now, think about this for a second. I have to be at my professional best. I live in New York City, one of the biggest networking capitals in the world. I have to negotiate high fees with CEOs to hire me. Every person I met: "Hi, my name is Mike. I'm mentally ill. I'm a troublemaker. I just wanted to see what would happen." That was a very interesting year because nobody ran from me. Nobody beat me up. Actually, I got a lot of hugs from people that year, made a lot of friends. I got hired for so much work as a drummer. I got invited to so many parties, and I got hit on by more women than I ever have in my life. I don't know. It's weird. And I was wondering, like, what's going on here? Why was it okay for me to say that? Here's why. Because when I practiced self care, I felt good about me. So it didn't matter what I said. When you feel good about you, it doesn't matter what challenges you have. That's going to be projected onto people. So it's really important that you practice that self care first so you can start having the conversation. One day I found myself in New York City in an elevator, and I have anxiety, as you know. I don't like elevators. They're just awkward, and especially like conversation in elevator. Like, do you say hi? Like, it's just weird in the elevator, right? And so I'm on this elevator, tiny elevator in New York City, and I have fairly wide shoulders, not the widest, but just fairly wide. And this woman gets on the elevator, so it's just me and her. It's this old building, and the elevator's going slow. So I decided to make conversation. So I said hi. She said hi. And I said, "This building is sketchy." I was trying to be funny. And she didn't find that funny. She said, "Sir, I work here." I said, "Oh, sorry." I said, "Ma'am, what do you do?" She said, "I'm a therapist." I said, "Oh, I'm mentally ill. Can I have your business card?" And for 10 years, she's been my therapist. We've got to normalize this conversation. When we talk about it in a low voice, we're the stigma. It's not some imaginary monster out there. We've got to normalize it. If you're going to be my friend and we go to Starbucks or the park, we're going to talk about my mental health. I'm going to talk about it loud, talk about everything loud. There's no shame I have about it. We don't need to be quiet about it because guess what? I'm a human. We all struggle with it. Learning to have the conversation. Now, please do not be like me and do that experiment because you promised. I see it all here in the chat that you promised not to do it. But here's something that you can do. If you want to start talking about it, which I encourage you to do, so you can just say to people, I'm going through a rough time in my private life, or I'm going through a rough time at home. Everyone knows what that means. You don't need to say it all. You can say, I'm struggling with some stress right now. I'm struggling with depression. You don't need to go into every detail, and it's okay to say it. And I think it's important that we do that. The other thing is when you go to therapy, you get to share things that are on your mind that you've never shared. In fact, all of us on this call right now have one thing in common. We all have something on our mind that we've never shared with anyone. And when we don't share it, it holds power over us. So this is an opportunity to take your power back. Stigma starts with shame, and you transform shame through self care. You transform the silence through starting to have the conversation. Now, for the biggie, how do you transform the sabotage, social injustice, self destructive behavior, and suicide? And I have to nail this thing in like 10 minutes and tell you how to do it. It's actually really simple, though. It's a thing called connection. When we learn to connect better with other people, we will actually transform those things. One of the questions that I often get from people is, what do I say to my friend, significant other, or family member who is struggling with mental health challenges? And I want to give you some guidance around that. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know the exact thing that works, but I can tell you what's worked about 85% of the time for a lot of people. First of all, when someone is struggling, don't give them advice. If we're friends and we're going out to eat, because that's what we do, right? You like how I'm just like subliminally putting that in your minds, right? And I'm telling you that I'm struggling. Please don't give me advice. Think about what I said in the beginning of my presentation. Mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating. If you give someone advice, they're just not open to that at the moment, and you're going to create a wall. However, there are two things that you can say that will open a door to conversation. One is, help me understand. But here's the key, when you say it, shh, don't say anything else. Just help me understand. The other thing that you can ask is, how can I support you? And again, when you do that, shh, don't say anything. One of the things that we run away from in this world is awkward conversations. Like, we don't like it when things are awkward, right? But when it comes to mental health, you need to chase awkward. The more awkward, the more effective. If you truly want to help someone, it's got to be an awkward conversation. And if you don't want it to be, you're making it about you and not the other person. Chase awkward as much as you can, everybody. That's how you will start to connect with people. One thing that's come up right now is the loneliness factor with COVID-19 and the pandemic. And there are three dimensions to communication. There's one dimensional communication is you send me a text message or send me a message in the chat. We do that all the time. Facebook message, LinkedIn, whatever. Two-dimensional communication is you and I get on the phone and we get to hear each other's voice and there's a nice dynamic. And three-dimensional communication, which is what even the introverts of the world miss, is face-to-face. But unfortunately, we're stuck with lots of remote learning right now and social distancing and lockdowns. So I actually found sort of a solution. There's 2.5 communication, and that's what we're doing right now on Zoom, right? We go on Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. But here's the thing. When we do this, here's a trick that I learned that I want to share with you for using Zoom, especially if you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody. Now, watch what I'm doing here. I'm going to show you this. I'm looking at my computer. You are actually down below me about an inch, and the camera's right there. I'm going to take a moment and look into the camera, and I'm picturing looking at you and looking into your eyes and seeing your humanity. And I'm doing that just for a moment to let you know that I'm with you, that I care about you and I want to give you help for any mental health challenge you might have. That simple act of doing that for a moment, the other person on the other end will feel. And I hope some of you felt that I do care about you and that's why I'm doing this. So whenever you have that opportunity and you're on a FaceTime conversation, don't look at the person on the screen, look into the camera, picture the person and picture looking into their eyes and seeing their humanity. Now, please don't do this for the entire time. That's creepy. Don't be weird. I don't want you to do that. But I'm going to challenge you to something else. As we start socializing face to face again, I challenge you to look at people for a moment in their eyes and see their humanity. Out of all the different strategies and tools that I have been given through the years for my mental health, this one is one of the top two that have helped me. It's really important that we do this as humans and make that connection with each other. So, in summary, stigma starts with shame. Shame leads to silence, and silence leads to sabotage, social injustice, self destructive behavior, and suicide. But the way we transform shame is through self care. The way we transform silence is through conversation. And the way we transform the other stuff is through connecting. It's that simple. If you start doing it in the next 24 hours, it's going to change your life. I want to share with you, I'm the author of the book, Transforming Stigma, How to Become a Mental Wellness Superhero. I want to share a little story about this book. For years, I was the one speaker that never had a book. And I was proud of myself. I was like, yeah, I don't got no book. And like eventually, people pressured me to write it. And I don't know if you've had the experience where you had to send like an email or a text message you don't want to send, and you send it and like run away from your phone. Maybe I just do that all the time. You send the email and shut off the computer. And so when I published this book, I went on Amazon and I was like, okay, I'm going to hit publish, shut off the computer, and just like go away. Like I don't want to see what happens, right? And I hit publish, and I found out that within the first week, it went to number one on Amazon in children's health, number one in teen health, and number one in mental illness. And we've been selling out of these things like crazy. There's lots of good stuff in this book for you. I promise you, it's an extension of what I've given you today. So I encourage you to check it out on Amazon or your favorite bookstore. Also, I would love to hear from you and know what you got out of this presentation. So I'm going to give you a homework assignment. I'm going to ask you to go on LinkedIn and find me and send me a message and let me know what you are going to do that you learned today in this presentation. I want to hear that from you on LinkedIn. Send me a message. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. We can always schedule some time to quickly chat or whatever, because I want you to get the help that you need. In summary, I want to share something recently that has come up about 2020. There are three emotions that have really caused a lot of problems for people this year. One is anger. Maybe those of you that have never even had anger problems before have dealt with anger. The other is fear. There's a lot of fear going on right now. And the other is grief. It's grief for the way life used to be. And I know that some of you might have lost some people due to COVID-19. And there's a lot of grief, and there's nothing that I can say that can make that better. Those three emotions are like the ones like nobody ever wants to talk about: anger, grief, and fear. And for most of my life, those are the emotions that ruled me. And that's why I struggled. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I learned a secret that I wish someone would have told me in the fourth grade so I didn't have to start going to the mental hospital. I wish someone would have told me this so I wouldn't have had the mental health problems I did as a kid. And the secret is this: anger, grief, and fear are three of the best emotions you can have. They're three of the most amazing emotions and the most helpful emotions that you can have. You see, when we think of anger, we think of hostility and violence. But when you process your anger with a therapist, with sitting with your feelings, anger becomes leadership, decisiveness, passion. Think about it. That's the positive of anger. You need your anger. And fear. When you don't deal with fear, it becomes anxiety. And if you've already got anxiety, it makes it a lot worse. But when you process your fear, it becomes vision and it becomes courage. Learn to sit with your fear. It's a beautiful emotion. And grief, the worst one of all. Grief feels like it's never ending. I recently learned something about grief just a few nights ago in a book I'm reading called Letting Go. I don't know who the author is, but it's a great book. It's helping me with letting go. And one of the things this author said was so interesting about grief is that when you are really sad about something, a lot of times the hardest thing is we're just trying to hold it together. Allowing that sadness to come out, usually, if tears start coming out or a tantrum, it's not going to be more than 10 to 20 minutes. And after that, you calm down. So giving yourself that space to let the grief come out is really important to do. Sometimes I sit out here in my living room at night and just let the grief come out. It's like, all right, we're hanging out. Let's go. That's all it is. But when you process your grief, it becomes joy. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me today. I was excited to do this presentation. I really wish I was in Massachusetts to meet all of you. And I promise I will be at some point. I love going to Massachusetts. I've done so much work there, and I feel like I've got some new friends here. And we're going to take some time for questions in a moment, but I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for your trust in me. I appreciate you.